week 3 of The Artist's Way, and I've had a bit of a falling out with this author, I've got to be honest. It's just, I don't know how much I want to keep going in this book, but I'm going to talk you through why. Following on from weeks 1 and 2, I had a bit of a gap, quite a big gap. It's been like 5 weeks or something, maybe longer. And I thought I should give a bit of background on what's been going on with me, which might also reflect on why this week of The Artist's Way has just irritated the heck out of me. I've made a video before explaining that I've had 3 miscarriages. Well, I had another miscarriage. It was rough, 11-week loss. So I feel like because of that happening and then me trying to do this week, it's just geared me up to be like, this is a load of old rubbish. So maybe I've got a little bit of bias, but I'll explain, okay? We'll go through this and I'll explain why I have big disagreements with the author on this chapter of the book particularly. Week 3 is meant to be about recovering a sense of power, okay? She starts off talking about anger. She says anger is a fuel and we feel it and we want to do something with it, but we're so nice that we deny it and we bury it and we ignore it instead of listening to it. And I totally agree with this. I mean, I've mentioned before that I had a lot of therapy, and as part of that therapy, anger management was included. And I was like, why do I need anger management? I'm not a particularly angry person. Like, I was anxious and depressed, but I wasn't really angry. But actually that therapy was really helpful at basically that, just saying that sort of from a young age we are taught to suppress anger, and that anger's a bad emotion, and I think that can cause a lot of problems in life if you don't listen to your anger and harness it correctly. And that's sort of what she's saying here, which I agree with her. So she says anger's a map and it shows your boundaries and where you want to go and where you've been and if you liked it or not. It's meant to be acted upon rather than acted out. It points the direction and we should use it as fuel. So she says translate anger and what's the message it's sending you. And in a sort of creative way, or based around like creativity, she says you could feel angry thinking, oh, I had a similar idea, I could have done that. You are maybe angry at yourself and that anger is showing you what you want to do and that maybe you need to learn how to do it and put more effort into it. Another example was I had that idea years ago and now they've done it, which is your anger is telling you to stop procrastinating and get moving. So I think she's got valid points there. She also says anger tells you that your old life is getting in the way and you can't get away with things anymore. She says you're being reborn and birth hurts and that anger should propel you into your new life. And it's a tool meant to be drawn upon. And all of those things I agree with. I think she's right here. She says anger is your friend, but not a nice one, but it's loyal and it wants you to act in your best interest. Anger is an invitation for you to make changes in your life and reflect on why you're feeling that. So week 3 starts good, I agree with all that. And then she dives into just too much God. I'm really sorry. It's just too much. She gets really, really preachy. The next section is about answered prayers. And this is a big section. She talks about this a lot. She talks about answered prayers and she says, answered prayers deliver us back to our own hand. It's an example of synchronicity. So synchronicity is the idea that 2 coincidental events are linked in some mysterious way and it's that kind of it was meant to be kind of feeling. Now I think a lot of people experience this feeling of synchronicity. I think we all do, and that's because it's a very human thing to do, to attribute meaning to 2 unrelated events, and I'll explain more as we go through. But her examples are a woman goes in to a rare bookshop and she finds a rare book that she was wondering about a few days ago. Or a man who secretly wants to be a writer meets a professional writer and he decides to become his mentor for him, and that sort of propels him into his career. For me, that's more, there's small actions that someone has taken that's impacted their life. It's sent them in a direction, but they took action. She was thinking about that book and she found it in a bookstore. There's something called the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, or the frequency illusion, and this is a cognitive bias that is just part of human thinking, and it affects how we deal with information. So basically, if you've been thinking about something a lot recently, or you've just learnt something, it appears to be everywhere and you notice it a lot more often. To you, it feels like it's everywhere and it's more common than it actually is. But that is a cognitive bias. You are just noticing it more. If you hadn't have been thinking about that a lot, or if you hadn't have learnt about it recently, your brain wouldn't have picked up on it. You wouldn't have actually noticed it. With synchronistic events, she attributes these acts to God and says that some people dismiss them as sheer coincidence. That's because they are coincidence. And we'll talk about why science backs that up a little further along. She also says, if God does not exist, then we're all off the hook. There is no divine retribution, and if life is rubbish, then what did you expect? If there is no God, or if God doesn't care about our lives, then we can just roll along and declare that some things are impossible or unfair, and if God or no God is responsible for the state of the world, we can be cynical and resign ourselves to inaction and apathy. Why try to change anything? Like, really? Like, first of all, it annoys me that she lumps together atheists and agnostic people, or people struggling with their faith. And she's just saying there, believe God is interested in your life, basically. She's saying strengthen your faith. She's preaching, isn't she? She's just full on preaching there, really. And I know as part of people's faith, God tells them to preach. So that's just what a lot of religious people take it upon themselves to do, because God told them so. So she's clearly put a lot in this book. Anyway, let's get back to her. So her words: if there is a God that acts and hears us, then we may be able to do something. You can do something without believing in God. God knows sky is the limit. Any honest person will tell you that possibility is far more frightening than impossibility, and freedom is more scary than prison. Maybe we should ask some prisoners that. Does she really think that freedom is more scary than prison? I don't think a lot of people that have experienced prison would say that, to be honest. It's the wording, if I'm being honest. You know, she's saying anyone honest. So if you disagree with her, you're wrong because you're just being dishonest. If we have to deal with a force beyond ourselves, we have to move into actions on those dreams. So the only reason you've not done some of the things you wanted to do is because you didn't believe in God enough, or you don't believe in God at all. That's why you're not doing well in your creative endeavours. Like, why can't we be the agents of our own actions and our own success? Why must God take credit for it? By this point, you can really tell this book is written by a very religious person, trying to relate to other people. She's trying to be secular, but she is failing, in my opinion. There is just too much preaching at this point and God-fearing going on here. This is really where she lost a lot of my respect. She quotes Jesus, okay? She doesn't even quote like the full Bible text. She just says, Jesus had some unpleasant words ascribed to him. Okay, that's how she introduces it. Ask and you shall receive, knock and it shall be opened. Now, yeah, the Bible quote is a lot longer than that, right? But Why are those unpleasant words? Like, when you look at the whole Bible quote, it's actually not that unpleasant, but I don't know why she thinks that unpleasant. But she suggests that he's talking about scientific method, okay? Ask, experiment, and see what happens, record the results. Now, that is the poorest explanation of scientific method and a really big reach, if you ask me. Scientific method involves so much more than that. You make observations and questions, and there is research, what's already out there. You form a hypothesis and you make predictions, and then you experiment, you analyse the result, you draw conclusions, and then you share those results. So her explanation is so oversimplified that it's just ignorant at that point, really. On to her words again. We call prayers answered coincidence and luck instead of what it is, the work of God, activated by our own hand when we act on our dreams and commit to our soul. Again, this is hardcore preaching now. She's just straight up saying coincidence and luck are the act of God. Now, if you don't believe in God, this just sounds like a load of rubbish, really. When we answer the call to commit to our deepest desires and selves, we set in motion synchronicity, a fortuitous intermeshing of events. It's kind of also known as serendipity as well, really. Once you begin your creative recovery, you may find it cropping up everywhere. So she is obviously a hardcore believer in synchronicity or synchronistic events happening. And honestly, a lot of religious people do believe in synchronicity. And it's been debunked. It has really been debunked. And if you look at it from a scientific point of view, it's really clear that synchronicity is coincidence based on human thinking. So obviously the author believes in synchronicity, right? She quotes Carl Jung, who's an early Swiss psychiatrist, psychologist, psychotherapist, back in like the 18 to 1900s. And he was the one who coined the term synchronicity. She is loosely referring to this phenomenon. Jung's definition of synchronicity, the phenomenon of an intelligent and responsive universe acting and reacting in our own interest. It is essentially saying the coincidence of events happening is something more than merely just chance. For Jung, an example of synchronicity was one night a patient of his was describing to him a dream they had about a golden scarab. And Jung was very into sort of dream analysis and the meaning behind them and the unconscious. And the next day, during a psychotherapy session, an insect flew against a cabinet window and he captured it, and it turned out to be a golden scarab. And at that time of year, it was quite rare in that location for them to actually be there. So he saw that as an example of a synchronistic event. Now, events like that are interesting, but is there any meaning to it? No. If we look from a more scientific perspective, synchronicity is the phenomenon where people interpret two separate, unrelated experiences as being meaningfully connected, even though there is no evidence that those two events are connected in any meaningful way. Now, as with this author, a lot of people who are religious or quite spiritual can see these events as being linked and meaningful, but this can actually be really dangerous, and I'll explain in a little bit. But scientists believe these events that are coincidental are only seen as meaningful because of aspects of human thinking, cognitive biases. An example of such would be confirmation bias, where people only seek out evidence to support their ideas and ignore anything that contradicts it. Again, which can be very dangerous. It can create echo chambers of misinformation, which is frankly rife on the internet nowadays. There is also hindsight bias, which is the tendency to look back at past events and think you could have predicted the outcome of them happening. And we're human. We all do this. We do it all the time. And the same with synchronicity. You are judging the probability of those two events happening after they've already occurred. It's like judging the probability of your birth. It seems very, very unlikely, but it happened. It's just not meaningful to look at things in hindsight like that. It's like looking at the odds of winning a race when the race has already happened. It's just not meaningful. So, people who lean into a synchronicity, they really annoy me, okay, a lot. These are the kind of people who, they say things like, everything happens for a reason. Everything is connected. The universe is sending you a message. Like, they believe in meaningful coincidences, not accounting for random chance or natural causes. And I think it can lead to people to say some really hurtful things sometimes. Like, let's take an example, right? I told you I'd had a miscarriage recently. Let me give you an example of this kind of thinking and what people have said to me, okay? It wasn't meant to be. Why would you say that to someone? What is helpful about attributing something to fate or destiny or God? Does God choose to take babies away from mothers? Was that mother not deserving? Why would anyone want that sort of God? Nothing is meant to be or not meant to be. Things just happen. But as humans, we tend to assign meaning to events in our lives. It's that simple. It makes us feel more grounded. We want to feel in control. Yes, some miscarriages do have a cause or a reason, but the majority of miscarriages, we don't know the reason behind. A lot of it is just something is wrong with the embryo. It just doesn't work out. It happens. Bad things happen in life. Lots of miscarriages happen for no known reason. 1 in 3 pregnancies end in miscarriage. Human reproduction is very inefficient. It is biology. It just happens. There is often no more meaning to it than that. And that is a hard pill to swallow. So let's look back at the author and her book, okay? Let's think about suffering for a second and tragedy. If you believe in synchronicity and a purpose-driven universe, how do you cope when bad things happen? And from what I can see, a lot of religious people are either consoled and sure that the path will be revealed to them in the future, or they are embittered with a God who they think does not care about them. How could God have this plan for me? Why must I suffer so? And their faith may be weakened for years, and that can cause a lot of emotional turmoil. So it's really split, isn't it? This faith can be really comforting to some people, or it can lead to disillusionment, to a feeling of abandonment by the God who is meant to love you. So it's a really tough topic, isn't it? So what is the alternative? The alternative is that life is often random. There is no plan or purpose other than those caused by intentional agents. And we, as humans, are intentional agents. And that can be really emotionally liberating. We, as humans, are responsible for our actions, and those actions can lead to positive things and good things happening in our life. It also answers why we think things happen for a reason, because we are intentional agents and we look for that in everywhere. We look for it everywhere. We are trying to interpret actions as being from other intentional agents. It is in our psychology. Human brains are pattern seeking and agency detecting. We evolved these tendencies to survive, both as predator and as prey and as social beings trying to interact with the people around us. These traits were favoured because of their survival value. We are so good at identifying patterns that we overshoot, we overextend, we see meaningful patterns in the meaningless and attribute agency to random natural events where it is not. This can lead to people believing that synchronistic events are controlled by supernatural agents such as God, in just the whole concept of synchronicity. Now let's think about the creative parts of our brains for a second. It's a very human aspect of us, and we have these brilliant storytelling brains. Look throughout history, we love stories. We love coherent stories with grand narratives full of meaning and satisfying ends. We seek it out. We want things to happen for a reason. Our brains are not satisfied with randomness. We want to know. We really want to know. You know, it's the whole issue with the human struggle to find meaning. We want some sort of order, and it can be frustrating when there isn't. A lot of people are scared that if the universe doesn't have a purpose, then neither do we. And they are bewildered by the complexity of the things around us, and how could that come about by pure random chance in a purposeless way. But science tells us that the universe is fundamentally random and purposeless, but how marvellous it is at everything that can occur at random. Another fascinating little offshoot is what science and psychology can tell us about the human brain and why it has this tendency to believe in things like synchronicity. And actually looking at mental health disorders like psychosis can shed light on otherwise normal human thinking. If we look at psychosis, people often develop delusions which are unshakable beliefs that are obviously false to outside observers. People experiencing these delusions often feel that everything happens for a reason and it's all about them. There are hidden messages and signs everywhere, and it cannot possibly just be a coincidence. Everything refers back to them in a paranoid or grandiose way. Now, these people are connecting too many dots. The arbitrary suddenly becomes meaningful when it should not. And there are studies into this, into interactions that happen in the brain in people that have psychosis. Another aspect of human thinking is that we notice things more when they are personally relevant to us. For example, a woman who wants to get pregnant may notice adverts on TV or on their phone, or they may see children everywhere they go, and they may see a pregnancy test advert on the sign of a bus shelter, and the logical part of the brain knows that was not placed there deliberately for her. Thinking that would be seen as quite delusional. However, people still can see that as some sort of sign or an omen, a sign that she may get pregnant soon. This way of thinking doesn't seem weird to us generally because it's a very human experience. Our brain tends to do this to us. It wants to find some sort of meaning, and it's overshooting. Overall, delusions are in many ways just an extreme version of normal human cognitive thinking or cognitive errors or biases. In fact, thinking that things are intended with a self-referential significance is sort of the default way of thinking. Now, to override these intuitions requires skeptical, critical thinking, otherwise known as science. And I mentioned briefly before that viewing coincidences or synchronicities as forms or guidance from God or the universe can actually be very dangerous. It's not all sweet and harmless. If you look throughout history, history is littered with death. Countless examples of people validating their horrendous and cruel acts based on following signs. Think of how many people were slaughtered by kings chasing meaning behind coincidences. Anyway, that is a massive tangent I've gone on. So let's go back to the author, shall we? She says, I have seldom conceived a plan without being given the means to accomplishment. I mean, this is just boasting about her own success at this point. It's easy to feel that way when you're already like most of the way down that path. She says, choose what you would do and the how falls into place. No, it doesn't. You need to take action for things to fall into place. That phrase annoys me as well. I'm sorry, I'm so whingy about this. I really want to like this book, I do. I really want to like it, but Like, I can't say to you guys, hey guys, I'm going to make £10,000 from my art next year, and then I do nothing about it. It's not going to magically fall into place, no matter how much I want it to be true, is it? I would have to make a lot of purposeful actions and get pretty lucky to do that, because this is just a hobby for me, you know, making art and doing YouTube. I don't make money from these things. I actually lose money doing art, so, you know, I can't, see what I mean? I would have to put action behind it. And she's just saying, choose a path and it will fall into place. No, you have to work towards doing it. She's really losing me here, can you tell? Now she goes back to creative work, you can count on synchronicity. We just spoke about that, and you can't. The universe gives it support, and we are miserly in what we accept. I mean, this is very judgmental again. So we haven't been successful yet because we aren't accepting the universe's actions or help. How does this make any logical sense? And now all of a sudden you're aware of the universe, so things are going to start going your way? But then she goes on to, whatever you think you can do, begin it. Action has power in it. Okay, finally she's getting to the point that with actions there will be an effect. This isn't the universe rewarding you. You are setting into motion a chain of events by doing. You are the agent here. Oh, okay, we need to move on. Okay, next she talks about shame. She talks about shame being controlling, and it's there to stop us embarrassing ourselves, and how we all have a lot of shame from childhood. And shame is one of the reasons why it's hard for us to take actions. So we worry about other person's opinions, and in our childhood we may have been shamed for our curiosities or our social skills, our interests, our sexuality, spirituality, anything. And now, bringing it back to creativity, she says art brings light to these things, and often deep emotions like shame can be a driving force for creating and expressing sort of deeper emotions, I guess like anger as well. And some people don't want to see this, so they blame the artists for emotive artworks. She said, art opens the door and heals, but you must expose the wound, which is often reacted to in shame, like how dare you do this. And also shame may kick in if you receive bad reviews, and that even finishing an artwork may cause shame, or may stop you actually finishing it. I'm not worthy to put this out here. What will people think? You're trying to deny the pain of someone judging you and feeling that shame by not completing it, if that makes sense. Or that's what I think she's trying to say. Putting things out into the world is dangerous for your artistic child, essentially. And shame can make us feel wrong for wanting to create, and to protect ourselves we say it doesn't matter, you know, we can be dismissive. Oh, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks, it doesn't matter what I make, you know, lots of protective sort of mechanisms come in that way. I mentioned she delved into criticisms, and she says there are two types. There are damaging types and constructive types. And damaging types can be dismissive or rude or ridicule us, condemn us, whereas constructive criticism can lead us to improvements. And we must learn to protect ourselves from the more damaging kind of criticism, and be proactive in searching out the right kind of criticism from people who support us, and artists, peers that are going to give you that more constructive criticism. Not always, to be fair, but you're more likely to get it from there. And the last thing I thought she said was actually very helpful. She said we can't control the criticism we receive, but we can comfort our inner artist over unfair criticism. So she's winning me back a little bit with this. It was just that synchronicity thing that just got to me, I think. She then talks about dealing with criticism, and that art requires a safe space with a good community of friends and supporters. Try not to let that criticism and self-doubt in, that you should receive criticism and sort of get over it, basically. Try not to hold on to it and just use what is useful to you. Be nurturing to yourself. Try and keep positive criticism and good reviews. So if you do get bad criticism, you can look back at the positive ones and say, just to try and override when you do get hurtful criticism. The final chapter of what feels like a very long week 3 is growth. She talks about growth being erratic, which I think is sort of unanimous. Most people think of it as 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Again, I think that's just part of the learning process. You have to make mistakes to move forward. That's how you learn. You learn from your mistakes. It's how you improve. Growth occurs in spurts, and you can lie dormant sometimes. Just like me, I've just had like 4 or 5 weeks of not doing anything because I needed that time to heal personally. And to be kind to yourself in small ways, make sure you're eating well, look after yourself. She talks about random things like getting rid of old clothes. Like, I think she means try and make sure your surroundings are ordered. And I mean, because I understand stuff like that. It's like I do quite a lot of I try to do sort of more minimalistic stuff, especially over the last 5 years. I've got rid of a lot of stuff. And an example of that is a really packed wardrobe. It can be a lot to have to make choices all the time. And if you just got a wardrobe full of horrible old clothes you hate, you go in there every day, it's uninspiring, and you've got no room to hang anything up, and you're just sifting through nothing you want to wear, and you just pick the same old thing, get rid of all the other stuff, and just keep the things you like. And you go in there and you can just pick out what you like. It's about minimising the amount of choices you have to do on a day. So I quite like that sort of aspect of it. But she just says, do nice things for yourself, basically. But then she goes in and says, do 1 nice thing and God will do 2 more. So she's really going preaching hard. It's God's will for us to be creative. So she's really not holding back anymore at this point. She's not even hiding it. So she also talks about experimenting with solitude, which I think she kind of does with the artist dates anyway. That's where you're meant to be having time to check in with yourself and focus and give yourself a bit of a break and a creative retreat, maybe. Do you know what? It actually makes me feel really sad that I feel this way about this chapter, because there are a lot of good gems of information in chapter 3, but just that whole section on synchronicity and the preaching, it's getting so old, and this is only week 3 of the book. Like I said, I'm really sensitive to this because of, obviously, my past couple of weeks have been really horrific. Probably not the best frame of mind to read this in. I've wanted to pick this up again to sort of get back into the swing of things, but it's just irritated me. Ooh. Now we move on to the tasks of this week, and we're going to fly through these because we have spent way too much time just discussing like the main parts of the book. Task 1 was to describe your childhood room and sketch it. What was your favourite thing about it? What do you like about your room now? So I sketched out both of my rooms, just head down. I didn't do like a proper like 3D sort of sketch. Don't know why, I could have. I just fancied doing like a room plan. My childhood room was amazing. My parents converted the attic for me, and I had like my own floor of the house basically. I had 2 rooms. And I had like a sink in one room and a bed, and I had a beautiful view. And it was a right recluse as a child. I think I had it from, I don't know, I must have been like 10 or something when I got that room. So on my teenage years, it was really nice having like privacy up there. My room now is very cosy. I sleep with my two children in essentially what is a giant cot. So I have two cot beds attached to my bed. So it is very cosy, and I wouldn't change it at all. You know, I think parenting is a 24/7 job, and I can't leave young children alone in a room on their own. So they stay with me. And having it this way, I want my children to know they can always count on me, no matter the time of day. And I'm sure eventually we'll transition them into their own rooms. But I mean, my oldest has just turned 3, so it's not the biggest priority right now. Task 2, describe 5 traits you like in yourself as a child. Now, I was a confident child. Like, I would get up on stage on holiday and dance with like the performers as a young kid. Like, I don't know where I got that from, but I was a very, very confident young child. Like, I played Father Christmas in a school play, like the lead role. None of the boys wanted to be Father Christmas. I was like, yeah, I'll do that. And that was a lot of words for that. I was like the person who spoke the most. So I was confident. I was curious as well. I was interested in everything and anything, and I think I still am now, really. I was very social, I was very good at keeping friendships, sort of better than I am now, to be honest. I was very determined, I didn't give up easily, and I wasn't afraid of just being myself. It says list 5 childhood accomplishments and 5 childhood favourite foods. I couldn't think of 5, really. I was a really good skier on winter holidays. I had my stories read out in English literature twice, and I got an A star on my exams, which was really good because, you know, I'm dyslexic, so my spelling was rubbish, but they didn't mind that. I still got an A star. And again, I was lead in one school play. It's kind of my biggest accomplishment. I can't really think of any other ones. Foods, like, this is random, but I like strawberry licorice. Iced gems, which are like delicious. Chocolate milk, crisps, chocolate, just like the standard. Like, just all the like naughty foods you like as a kid. Number 4, she said, look at habits. Look at habits that cause shame. Things like watching TV, hanging out with boring friends. She's pretty harsh, this author, isn't she? And not having time to exercise, and list 3 subtle foes. So I just listed watching TV and Netflix and YouTube when I could be doing painting or drawing, maybe. Scrolling on Facebook, sometimes I can do that. Sometimes for a little bit too long. And not exercising. Which I guess the consequence is being less healthy and hard to lose weight, but it's hard to like make, like, first of all, like, a lot of exercise is really boring. Like, going for a run for me is just like, 1, it's painful, and 2, it's just like, there's no purpose. Like, if I'm going to do a sport, I used to do climbing. Like, that, you had a purpose. Your goal was to get up the wall. I did rowing when I was at university. Again, that had like a purpose. You were rowing with your team to get somewhere. You were working together. That stuff is more stimulating for me. A lot of like exercise, I do find really boring, and that really puts me off. And having kids, it's really hard to like get, like, say, structure. So I mean, I don't really sit down in the day. I'm chasing after them all day and taking them out and all that stuff. So I'm active. I'm just not actively exercising, if that makes sense. Number 5. Make a list of friends who nurture you. I listed 3 friends, so that's good. I've got 3 friends. And then call a friend who makes you feel good, and I did that. This week. Number 7, she said to do an artist brain activity, and her examples were painting, driving, walking, scrubbing, or running. I was like, I don't know whether she just means like activities where you can get into like a flow state. So obviously I decided to do painting and just painted for an hour. Number 8, 5 people you admire. 5 you secretly admire. And then number 9 as well was list 5 people you wish you had met that were already dead. Like, I've got to be honest, I'm not into like celebrities. So living people, I thought of David Attenborough because he's just national treasure and all. And not living people, I had Charles Darwin, Stephen Hawking, Florence Nightingale, and Carl Rogers. And she said, what do these people have relation? You know, what are you looking for in these people? And I guess a lot of these people are, I mean, there's an explorer, there's a lot of deep thinkers, and there's compassionate people like Florence Nightingale and Carl Rogers. So it's people that have had a big impact on the world, really, isn't it? And then finally, we have the check-in. How many morning pages did I do? I did, I think, 3 days of writing morning pages, and then I did 4 days of just doing little sketches. Did you do your artist date this week? Yes, I did. I did another one of my little boxes. Did you experience any synchronicity this week? I'm not going to answer that question because we already know that I think it's rubbish. And number 4, were there other issues you considered significant in your recovery? Well, yeah, I guess. Like, I literally had 5 weeks off for a massive, like, traumatic life event, but I'm getting back into the flow of things. So I've got to be honest, I am really hoping week 4 is better than this. So, yeah. Thank you for watching. I hope I haven't made your ears bleed with my ranting. But yeah, good to see you again. I have a lot of other videos that I have in mind. I'm going to do one on watercolour books and things like that, so it's not all just going to be the artist's way. But yeah, let me know if you like this series and if you want to see more. I'm going to be more positive next week, okay? Week 4 is going to be a much more positive week, I promise. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.